Then they came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, that is, son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called to the blind man, "Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you." Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. The blind man said, "Rabbi, I want to see." "Go," said Jesus, "your faith has healed you." Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Phyllis Tickle was an American historical theologian. You probably won't have heard of her because she was a liberal theologian, so much of her output wasn't appropriate for an evangelical church such as ours. But a few years ago I heard her speak at the Greenbelt Festival, and she was talking about the historical role of the Holy Spirit and how the Spirit has moved in different ways throughout history. Particularly how the Spirit has healed, noting that in the past 100 years or so, she says, there has been more of the Spirit's healing seen than at any point since Jesus' time. For example, she spoke about a time during the Azusa Street revival that saw many amazing healings. And there are documents by journalists at the time. They include the healing of a broken arm. And it's vividly described in the newspapers, a bad break with the bones sticking out of the skin. But after the prayer, she had a perfect arm once again. These stories, and there's literally thousands like them, offer us proof that God can heal. But what is needed for healing? Is there a discernible pattern? I'm not convinced that it happens just one way. But I think our passage does give us some insights for those who are seeking healing from God. So we're in Mark's Gospel here. That's the short, concise, to the point Gospel. And typical of Mark, he's short, concise, and pretty much to the point here. But he packs in loads of information for us to digest. And I've looked at the story and found, I think there's 6 stages here in this healing journey of Bartimaeus. So I'm just going to go through them this morning. Stage 1. Jesus, of course, by this point, has a reputation as a healer. He is known, and of course, in this era with restricted medical knowledge, many will be wanting to see Jesus. It's at this point that we reach Bartimaeus. Of course, Bartimaeus has heard the stories about Jesus. He's in a prime position, really, isn't he, to hear all the stories that are coming through. This is the first stage in his healing journey. It's amazing to think that without the spread of the actions of Jesus, Bartimaeus wouldn't even have got to the starting post. It's why it's so important for us to share with our community the actions of Christ. When I was training for the ministry in Bristol, I met Sally. She's the wife of the Reverend Alistair Palmer. I was at their church on a placement, And Sally is an incredible woman. Give her literally the smallest opportunity, 2 minutes, and you will know her story. She tells everyone she meets about her healing, a real death to life experience. Their church is in one of the most deprived areas of Bristol, indeed the country. And at their version of Coffee Call each week, she tells her story. And those who hear it, in turn, want to be healed, and many are. Stage 2. Bartimaeus asks Jesus for mercy. Words with poignance. He places himself in a lower position and says, I need you, Jesus, but I am not worthy. So you need to have compassion on me. He acknowledges both that there is something wrong and that he needs help. He's recognised that this healer he's heard about could be the answer. You know, he could have been asking every passing rabbi who goes passing. We don't know. And nor can we have, at this point, any clue of his faith. He's entirely going on Jesus' reputation as a healer. Stage 3. Persistence. How quickly do we give up on prayer? How quickly do we give up on God? It's not so much an issue in our time, perhaps quite the opposite, but in Jesus' time, everything, the whole society was built around waiting. The people were patient, waiting for the Messiah. Of course, it was a slower, less hectic life. Today, we need everything right now. Instant gratification. But of course, that's a bit different when it comes to illness and pain. For everyone, wherever you are, the need is now. So Bartimaeus calls and calls and calls, and the crowd is getting annoyed at this. But Bartimaeus is going to do his damnedest, his best, to get this healer to help him. Stage 4. When Jesus speaks, Bartimaeus obeys. A simple but much missed point. Sometimes Jesus says, you need to do this. Well, that was easy for Bartimaeus because Jesus was physically right there. For us, it's a little harder. But if we want healing and Jesus is saying something about it, then we need to be proactive and do it. Is there anything in your life that God knows is hurting your healing? Things like the occult, spiritual healers. Sometimes we have to let something like that go. Put our faith entirely in Jesus to let him in and do the healing. Stage 5. Ask. Again, this might seem obvious, but we sometimes miss this. It's very obvious to all that Bartimaeus wants to see. But despite that, Jesus still says, Bartimaeus, what do you want me to do? And Bartimaeus replies, of course, I want to see. It's easy to miss, but somewhere in the process there must be asking. There's got to be prayer there somewhere. Of course, this prayer could also be on behalf of another person, such as when Jesus healed Jairus' daughter. And finally, stage 6. Follow. Bartimaeus got up after he was healed and he followed Jesus. This is where Bartimaeus not only physically sees, but spiritually sees as well. This rabbi is special. He puts his faith in him. And remember, a few moments ago, he has enough faith to believe that just maybe Jesus can heal him. But now his faith says, you should follow this man. Actually, this stage is not part of the healing journey, but it's an outcome of the healing. People are crying out for this right now in society, of course. We're in a situation we've not seen for over 100 years. By all the laws of logic, it's a time when we should be struggling to influence non-believers. And yet, a full third of the non-believing population has prayed at some point, if a recent survey is to be believed. There's still work to be done. Back in chapter 6 of Mark's Gospel, we have the instructions of Jesus when he sends out his disciples. Go and anoint people with oil and heal them, Jesus says. And now we have to think, what does that look like today? How do we fulfill that command?